In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. There is no mercy, no innocence, no room for gentleness. Worlds burn not because they are evil, but because they are weak. Billions live and die without ever being seen, without ever being protected. This galaxy rewards cruelty and breaks those who hesitate. Yet sometimes, against all logic, against all probability, something arrives that does not belong. Not a god, not a conqueror, not a monster, but a man who still believes his strength exists for others. He will stand where no one else will. He will shield the powerless, not because he must, but because he cannot bear not to. The galaxy will test him. It will try to make him kill. It will try to make him hate. It will try to make him abandon hope. And when it cannot, it will try to break him. This is the story of Pyotr Nikolaevich Rasputin, called Colossus, a gentle soul forged into living steel and cast into the cruelest universe imaginable, not to conquer it, but to protect what it would happily crush. The sky was wrong. Pyotr Rasputin knew that immediately. Not just the color, though it was bruised purple and black, choked with ash and burning clouds, but the weight of it. This sky did not belong to a world that cared whether people lived or died beneath it. This sky crushed. He remembered light. A rift tearing open in the air like a wound, howling with voices that were not voices, how his skin had prickled with fear before his mind could understand why. And then, impact. Pyotr struck the ground hard enough to crater it, rolling through shattered ferrocrete and broken stone. His body screamed in protest until instinct took over. Steel blossomed across his skin. Osmium caught the blow. The pain dulled. He lay still for a moment, eyes closed, listening. He heard screams, high-pitched, panicked, civilian. Pyotr rose slowly, the ground cracking beneath his metal feet. Beyond the ruined buildings, he saw them, dozens of people running through smoke-filled streets. Men, women, children, human. Behind them came the thunder. Armored figures advanced with mechanical precision, firing streams of red light that tore through flesh and turned bodies to ash. Others followed in heavier plating, carrying weapons that spat shells the size of Pyotr's fists. Imperial Guard. Pyotr did not know that name. He only knew what he saw. People were being slaughtered. A child tripped and fell. A guardsman raised his lasgun without slowing. Pyotr moved. He crossed the distance in a blur of shattered pavement, positioning himself between the weapon and the child, just as the rifle fired. Red light struck his chest. It tickled. Pyotr blinked, surprised. The guardsman froze, fired again. More light, more harmless warmth. Pyotr gently reached out and closed his hand around the barrel of the weapon, bending it into a knot without effort. The guardsman stared up at him, horrified. "What are you?" he whispered. Pyotr hesitated. "I'm here to help," he said in heavily accented Gothic, the words strange on his tongue but understandable. More weapons leveled. Pyotr raised his hands slowly, palms open. "Please," he said, "don't shoot. There are civilians." The guard commander barked an order. Heavy weapons shifted. Pyotr's eyes widened. That would hurt. Bolter fire thundered. Explosions ripped against Pyotr's chest and shoulders, cracking ceramite shards that weren't his. The impact staggered him. He felt it this time. Not deadly, but real. He dropped to one knee, more from shock than injury. This was no firefight. This was an execution. Pyotr looked behind him. The civilians had frozen, unsure whether to run or hide behind the towering metal giant who had stepped into death itself for them. He made a decision. Pyotr turned fully to face the firing line. He planted his feet, and he held. Bolter rounds burst and ricocheted, hammering his body hard enough to drive him into the ground, but not through him. His osmium skin flared with impact sparks. He did not advance. He did not strike back. He endured. Behind him, the civilians ran. Pyotr watched every one of them pass safely before him before he finally lifted his head toward the soldiers. His voice carried over the gunfire. "Please," he said again, quietly, desperately. Stop. The firing ceased, not because of mercy, because something else had arrived. A towering form descended from the sky on a plume of fire, massive, armored in ceramite the color of dried blood, marked with skulls and icons Piotr had never seen. And Astartes, its helm locked onto Piotr instantly. This is not a human, it rumbled over external speakers. Xenos or abomination, stand down. Piotr felt something cold settle in his chest. He lowered his head slightly. I don't want to fight you, he said honestly. I just want to protect them. The Space Marine stared, then raised his bolter. The Space Marine studied Piotr in the way predators study anomalies, not with fear, but with calculation. Its auto-senses swept him from head to toe. No warp distortion, no psychic signature, no known Xenos biopatterns. But the mass, the density, the impossible way last fire simply slid off his body. This thing is not demonic, the Marine voxed to the guardsman. Unknown designation, maintain suppression posture. Piotr exhaled slowly. He did not fully understand these warriors, but they had stopped shooting. That mattered. Piotr took a careful step forward. The ground cracked beneath his weight. Immediately, heavy weapons tracked him. He stopped. I don't want anyone hurt, he said, forcing himself to stay calm. These people are civilians. They didn't do anything. The Marine's helm tilted slightly. There are no civilians, it replied coldly. There are only compliant populations and traitors. Piotr felt his stomach knot. That's not true, he said quietly. Behind him, a woman clutched her child, staring up at him like he was a miracle or a final mistake. The Marine raised one armored hand. Abomination, it said. Step aside. This purge will continue. Piotr's jaw tightened. He did not move. I won't, he said. You'll have to go through me. A murmur rippled through the guardsmen. The Marine's weapons shifted. Bolter, chainsword. Piotr braced. He didn't want this. The Marine lunged. The ground exploded as ceramite mass met steel flesh. Piotr barely had time to react. He caught the Marine's arm as the chainsword screamed inches from his neck. Teeth bit into his osmium skin, sparks showering the street. Pain flared. Real pain. He grunted and twisted, hurling the Marine into the wreckage of a transport. The impact crushed metal and stone alike. The guards screamed in shock. The Marine rose instantly. Acknowledged, it growled. Target possesses Astartes-class strength. Piotr swallowed. He had not wanted to throw him that hard. The Marine charged again. This time, Piotr met him head-on. Their fists collided like artillery fire. Windows shattered in nearby buildings. The shockwave knocked guardsmen to the ground. Piotr blocked, grappled, redirected. He never struck to kill. He could have. But every time the thought brushed his mind, another face appeared, his sister Ileana, his mother, the people behind him. He would not become a butcher. A heavy weapon fired, not a lasgun, not a bolter. A heavy plasma discharge tore through the air. Piotr twisted, just in time, but the blast clipped his side. White-hot pain bloomed. He screamed. Molten metal ran down his flank. He stumbled, dropping to one knee. The Marine froze. So did Piotr. He realized something in that moment. This galaxy was not cautious. It would escalate until someone died. Piotr looked back. The civilians were gone, safe. He had accomplished what he came here to do. He turned to the Marine. His voice was strained but calm. I won't fight you anymore, he said, but I won't let you kill them either. He took a step back, then another. Turning his back on armed warriors went against every instinct he had, but Piotr trusted himself. The Marine watched, did not fire. Protocol warred with outcome. As Piotr retreated into the smoke and rubble, the Marine voxed his superiors. Unknown entity encountered. Designation suggested, Colossus. Behavior, protective, non-hostile unless provoked. The guardsman whispered the name as if it were a prayer, Colossus. Piotr vanished into the ruins, burned, shaken, but unbroken. And for the first time since arriving in this universe, he understood one terrifying truth. Being good here would be harder than being strong. Night fell hard on the ruined hive city. Ash drifted through the air like black snow. Fires rumbled beneath collapsed towers. The distant thunder of artillery echoed through the streets in slow, relentless rhythm. Pyotr Rasputin walked alone, not because he wanted to, but because no one in this world could walk beside him safely. He ducked into the shattered remains of an old hab complex and finally allowed himself to inspect the damage. The plasma burn on his ribs glowed faintly, metal soft and warped. His osmium form radiated heat like cooling forge iron. He pressed a hand against the wound and winced. It hurt, not enough to incapacitate him, but enough to remind him that even he had limits here. His healing factor pulsed sluggishly. This world's weapons were not toys. He breathed slowly, letting the pain steady his thoughts. "I have survived worse," he whispered. The memory of Ilyana's loss flickered at the corner of his mind. He pushed it away. Now was not the time to drown in ghosts. He heard them before he saw them. Soft footsteps, shuffling, fearful breaths, civilians. They had followed him, or perhaps had nowhere else to go. Paul turned and saw a handful of survivors gathered in the shadows. An elderly man clutching a half-burned prayer charm, a mother with a bloodied arm. 3 children huddled around her like frightened birds. When they realized he wasn't attacking, they stepped closer. "You saved us," the old man said quietly. "We didn't know creatures like you existed." Pyotr shook his head immediately. "I am not creature. I am man. My name is Pyotr." The children stared at the shining metal giant whose voice sounded like warm iron and sorrow. The mother whispered, "Are you here to protect us?" Pyotr hesitated. He didn't know why he was here. He didn't know this world. He didn't understand its wars, but he understood this. People needed him. So he nodded. "Yes," he said softly. "As long as I can stand, no harm will come to you." The relief on their faces hit him harder than the plasma blast. One of the children tugged at his hand. "Steel man, why did the soldiers try to kill us?" Pyotr knelt, lowering himself to eye level. "I don't know," he admitted, "but where I come from, soldiers protect the innocent." The old man flinched as if struck. "That is not how things work here." Pyotr frowned. "What do you mean?" The old man gestured at the burning city. "In the Imperium, innocence is a luxury. We are not protected, we are managed, and when we become inconvenient," he looked away, "we are purged." Pyotr felt his jaw tighten. "That is wrong." The old man laughed softly, the sound brittle. "You speak like someone who still believes people matter." Pyotr touched his chest, where his heart beat beneath metal. "They do," he said firmly. "All of them." The civilians exchanged looks. Hope was a dangerous thing, but right now it felt necessary. A distant klaxon howled through the ruins. Pyotr's instincts sharpened. He scanned the dark horizon and saw moving lights, sweeping search beams, the heavy stomp of armored boots, and the unmistakable whir of servo skulls. The Astartes was searching for him, and for these people. The mother's voice trembled. "They're coming." Pyotr rose to his full towering height. His metal form scraped the ceiling. "I will not let them hurt you." The old man clutched the prayer charm tighter. "But you cannot fight the angels of death." Pyotr looked toward the sound of marching giants. "No," he said quietly, "but I can hold them long enough for you to run." The children stared up at him with wide eyes. "Will you come with us?" one asked. Pyotr wished he could say yes, but he could already feel the psychic weight of the Astartes' presence pressing against his senses like an iron wall. If he stayed with them, they would die. He shook his head slowly. "I must stop them from finding you." The mother's eyes filled with tears. "But you'll die." Pyotr smiled gently. "I have been very hard to kill." He knelt and extended a massive hand. "Go, find shelter. Stay hidden. I will draw them away." They hesitated, then ran. Pyotr watched until the last child vanished into the ruins. Only then did he turn toward the advancing footsteps. His voice was a whisper meant only for himself. I am Colossus, and I will be their wall. The angels of death advanced without haste. They never did. Pyotr heard them long before he saw them. The deep, measured thud of ceramite boots against broken stone, the low growl of servo motors, the faint click of ammunition being chambered with ritual precision. 3 space marines this time, not one. Their helms gleamed dully in the firelight, chapter markings scarred by age and war. They moved in a loose spread, weapons lowered but ready. Pyotr stepped out into the open. The night wind rolled ash across his metal skin. He did not raise his fists. He did not hide. One of the Astartes leveled a bolter at him. Target reacquired, the Marine voxed. Designation, Colossus, priority escalated. Another Marine activated Auspex scans. No warp manifestation detected, he reported. No psychic signature, biological mass unusually dense. The third said nothing. He simply watched Pyotr. Why are you here? Pyotr asked, forcing calm into his voice. The silent Marine finally spoke. To cleanse. Pyotr felt anger stir, but he held it down. There were civilians here, Pyotr said. They were unarmed. The Marine replied instantly. All civilians are potential vectors of heresy. Pyotr clenched his hands. That is not protection, he said. That is fear. The Marines did not answer. They advanced. Bolters fired. The street erupted in thunder. Rounds slammed into Pyotr's chest and arms with bone-cracking force, driving him backwards step by step. His osmium skin absorbed the impacts, but each hit rang through him like a hammer on an anvil. He roared, not in pain, but effort, and lunged forward. He caught one Marine by the torso and slammed him into the ground hard enough to crater the street, pinning him without striking his head. Another Marine fired point blank. Pyotr felt the impact bite deep this time. Bolter rounds weren't lasguns. They cracked his metal skin, spalling shards from his shoulder. He gritted his teeth and twisted, ripping the bolter from the Marine's grasp and hurling it away. He did not crush the Marine's skull. He could have. He didn't. The third Marine moved in, fast. A chainsword screamed as it tore across Pyotr's back, carving sparks and metal fragments into the air. The pain dropped Pyotr to one knee. He gasped. This was not a training simulation. This was a war against an enemy who would not stop. Stay down, the Marine growled. This does not have to be agonizing. Pyotr pushed himself back up. No, he said through clenched teeth. You don't understand. He turned, slowly, deliberately. I will keep standing. The pinned Marine struggled beneath Pyotr's hand. He's holding back, he voxed. Why? Pyotr heard it. His voice was tired. Because if I stop holding back, you will not walk away. The silence that followed was brief but heavy. Then the lead Marine spoke again. Confirmed, he said. Target possesses restraint unnecessary and inefficient. Pyotr frowned. Restraint is not weakness, he said. The Marine raised his bolter. To us, he replied, it is heresy. Heavy footsteps echoed in the distance. Not Astartes, something bigger. Pyotr's eyes widened. He felt it before he saw it. A presence like pressure in the air, heavier than gravity itself. A commissar's voice rang out over loudspeakers. Do not fire! Bring it down! Pyotr realized then that he was not merely being hunted. He was being demonstrated against. If he fell here, publicly, it would justify everything. Pyotr looked past the Marines, back toward the dark alleys where the civilians had fled. He planted his feet again. Metal creaked. This time he did not move forward. He stood still. Bolter fire slammed into him again. Chainswords screamed. A missile struck nearby, sending him skidding across the ground in a spray of shattered rubble. He rose anyway. Blood ran beneath his metal skin. He barely noticed. He had made a promise, and Pyotr Rasputin did not break promises. Colossus has drawn the full attention of the Imperium. Mercy has marked him not as a hero, but as a problem. The Imperium did not fear Colossus. It feared what followed him. The Astartes fell back, not in retreat, but reassessment. Smoke rolled across the shattered avenue as heavier forms advanced into view. Chimera transports, heavy weapon teams, Vox relays crackling with overlapping orders. Piotr stood amid the wreckage, shoulders rising and falling with steady breaths. His osmium skin was cracked in places now, scored, burned, not broken. A guardsman's voice trembled over the Vox. "Command, it's still moving." Piotr looked toward the approaching armor. So this is how they answer mercy, he thought, with more guns. A commissar stepped forward, coat immaculate despite the ruin. He raised a power sword, not toward Piotr, but toward his own men. "You face a monster," the commissar barked. "It wears a man's face to confuse you." Piotr felt something twist in his chest. "I am not your enemy," he said loudly. "I don't want to hurt you." The commissar smiled thinly. "Want has nothing to do with duty." The sword snapped down. Fire! Autocannons roared. Heavy bolters thundered. Explosions ripped chunks from Piotr's body, throwing him backward through a manufactorum wall. This was no longer tickling fire. This was killing fire. Piotr smashed through floors and machinery before finally stopping, beneath twisted girders and molten slag. For a moment, everything went quiet. The guardsmen hesitated. "Is it dead?" someone whispered. Piotr moved. Slowly. Pain flared white-hot across his nerves as he pushed himself free of the wreckage, metal groaning under the strain. His healing factor fought desperately, knitting fractures as fast as it could, but not fast enough to ignore this forever. He could feel it now. If he stayed, if he kept standing here, they would eventually kill him. And then go back to the civilians, kill them first. The thought whispered through his mind, unbidden. End it quickly. One terrible moment. Protect countless lives afterward. His fists clenched. For a heartbeat, Piotr imagined it. Tearing through armor, ripping tanks apart, ending the firing line before it could fire again. He could do it. He was strong enough. The thought terrified him. No, he told himself fiercely. If I become that, then they're right. Piotr stood and raised his voice, not in anger, but grief. "There are children hiding behind me," he shouted. "If you advance, they will die." The commissar laughed. "There are always children," he replied. "That does not excuse disobedience." The power sword leveled again. Another command, another volley. Piotr stepped forward into it, not to attack, to draw fire away. Every step hurt. Every impact shook his bones. But the guns followed him. Good, he thought. Follow me. He ran. Not away, but through. Smashing through the flank of the formation, tearing treads from a chimera and hurling it aside, not at soldiers, but away from them. He let explosions chase him. He let them wound him. Every second their fire tracked him was another second civilians escaped. His vision blurred. Metal cracked audibly now. He did not know how long he could keep this up, but he knew why he was doing it. High above, hidden within Auspec's shadow, an inquisitorial observer watched the engagement unfold in silence. No psychic anomalies, no demonic manifestations, only a towering, battered figure refusing to strike killing blows, even as fire tore him apart. The observer murmured softly, "It's not a monster." He leaned back, troubled. "It's a shield." Eventually, the order came to cease fire. Not mercy, tactics. The battlefield lay ruined, vehicles destroyed, time wasted. Colossus was gone, vanished into the ruins, bloodied and broken but alive. The commissar snarled in frustration. The civilians were never found, which, in the Imperium, was failure. Colossus has survived his first true test, not by winning, but by enduring. And someone important has noticed that he chose pain over power. Dawn did not come gently. It never did on hive worlds. Piotr lay half buried beneath the collapsed shell of a transit hub, his osmium form dull and scarred. Smoke drifted in slow ribbons above him. Every movement sent a dull ache through his metal bones. His healing factor worked steadily, but this had been too much, too fast. Autocannon shells, heavy bolters, plasma fire. This galaxy did not test heroes once. It ground them down repeatedly. Piotr rolled onto his side and forced himself to rise. "They're safe," he whispered, more hope than certainty. That had to be enough. He sensed them before he saw them. Soft footsteps, hesitant, afraid. The civilians had come back. The old man from the ruins stood first, clutching his prayer charm. Behind him were the mother, the children, and others Piotr hadn't seen before. Workers, scavengers, people who should have known better than to return. You should have kept running, Piotr said hoarsely. They'll come back. The old man shook his head. They will always come back. He looked up at Piotr with eyes full of something dangerous. Hope, you didn't leave us. Piotr tried to answer, but his voice caught. He turned his face away, ashamed of how close he'd come to giving in to darker thoughts. I was afraid, he admitted quietly. Afraid of what I might do. The mother stepped forward. But you didn't. Her words settled over him like a weight. One of the children tugged his hand again. Steel brother, she said, will you stay? Piotr felt his chest tighten. Stay? In this hellscape? On a world that would break him? He looked around at the ruined city, then down at the people who had no one else. Yes, he said softly, I will stay. The old man bowed his head. Then we must hide you. The Imperium does not forgive defiance. Piotr understood that instinctively. But they will come again, he said, and next time they will bring more. They led him through forgotten maintenance tunnels beneath the hive, routes only the desperate remembered. Old rail lines, flooded corridors, half-collapsed vaults filled with rusted machines. Here the Imperium sensors struggled. Here the warp whispered, but faintly. Piotr could feel it like static against his thoughts, stronger when he allowed himself to return to human flesh. He stayed in his metal form longer now. It felt safer. Still, he could not sleep. As he stood watching the dim tunnels, Piotr felt something brush his thoughts. Not a voice, a suggestion. You could stop this forever. He turned sharply, scanning the dark. Nothing. You could end their fear. Piotr clenched his fists until the metal groaned. No, he whispered. He knew this touch, the warp. It smelled weakness, weariness, compassion stretched thin. He forced his osmium form to hold, grounding himself in the cold logic of steel. The whisper faded, frustrated. But it had tried. Days passed, then weeks. Colossus did not leave. He walked the lower levels of the hive, pulling people from rubble, standing between gangs and families, tearing open locked supply caches no one else could reach. He never killed. He restrained. He intimidated. He absorbed violence until it ran out of momentum. Word spread faster than Vox, a giant of steel, a brother who stood watch. A shield that did not demand faith. The underhive began to believe in something again, and that belief was dangerous. An administratum report crossed a desk far above the hive levels. It listed strange increases in civil survival rates, disruptions to routine purges, weapons fire diverted with no clear cause. A note was added in cold ink. Persistent anomaly. Recommend escalation to Ordo Hereticus. Piotr felt the pressure building, though he did not know why. He only knew this peace would not last. This galaxy hated kindness, and it would come to test him again. Colossus has chosen his path, not escape, not conquest. And now the Imperium will decide what to do with a miracle it cannot control. The skies above the hive darkened once more, not with smoke, but with authority. Black landers descended silently into sealed upper levels. Their hulls bore no chapter markings, no banners, only the sigil of the Inquisition. Colossus felt it before he saw it. A pressure, not violent like chaos, but cold and absolute. Purpose. He stayed in osmium form. Below, the people noticed too. The old man pressed a shaking hand to Piotr's arm. They have come for you. Piotr nodded. Yes. Inquisitor Kael'Moran did not storm the underhive with armies. He arrived with restraint. 24 stormtroopers, heavy suppression gear, null rods carried by silent attendants. He did not shout orders. He observed. Auspec's data scrolled across his visor as he watched the steel giant lift collapsed ceiling slabs with gentle care, freeing a trapped worker without hurry, without anger. Morin murmured to himself, "That is not how monsters behave." Pyotr felt the null rod's presence immediately. It was uncomfortable, not painful, but like being dragged half a step out of reality. He stepped forward willingly. "You do not need weapons," Pyotr said. "I won't hurt anyone." Morin raised a hand slightly. The stormtroopers held fire. "You are an unregistered transhuman operating without Imperial sanction," Morin said calmly. "Explain yourself." Pyotr hesitated. "I don't belong here," he said honestly. "I came by accident, but I will not abandon these people." Morin studied him closely. No Xenos markers, no warp taint, no arrogance. He paused, but no obedience. Pyotr lowered his gaze. "I obey my conscience." The words landed like a blade. Morin gestured. A stormtrooper shoved forward a bound prisoner, a ragged man accused of theft and sedition. "By Imperial law," Morin said, "this man is disposable." The prisoner sobbed. Morin's gaze never left Pyotr. "What would you do?" Pyotr's hands trembled. He looked at the man, at the fear, at the certainty of execution. "Let him live," Pyotr said quietly. "Punish him if you must, but don't kill him." Morin tilted his head. "And if his survival leads to rebellion, to heresy?" Pyotr met his eyes. "Then that is my failure," he said, "not his." Silence followed, dangerous silence. Morin stepped closer to Pyotr, voice lowered. "You are dangerous," he said, "not because of your strength, but because you make people think they deserve better." Pyotr did not deny it. Morin turned to the stormtroopers. "Release the prisoner." The man collapsed in shock. Pyotr stared. "You? Let him go?" Morin's expression was unreadable. "Consider it an experiment." Morin looked back to Pyotr. "You will not be forgiven forever," he said quietly. "There are Inquisitors who would burn this hive to erase your influence." Pyotr nodded. "I will still be here." Morin almost smiled. Almost. The Imperium has tested Colossus and chosen observation over extermination. But mercy recorded is mercy weaponized. Colossus has gained an ally, or a future executioner. After the Inquisitor left, something changed in the Underhive. People stopped scattering at the sound of boots, stopped extinguishing fires the moment authority drew near, stopped pretending they were already dead. They began to organize. Pyotr saw it in small ways at first. Shared foods, makeshift clinics guarded by volunteers, children assigned watchers instead of hiding alone. They weren't rebelling. They were surviving together. That frightened him more than gunfire. Pyotr stood atop a broken hab tower, scanning the maze of structures below. "You're making it worse," he whispered to himself. If he left now, the Imperium would return with flame. If he stayed, people would keep believing, and belief invited annihilation. The old man climbed the stairs behind him, joints protesting. "You look troubled," he said. "I don't want them to die because of me." The old man laughed softly. "We were dying long before you came." He placed a hand on Pyotr's arm. "At least now, we die standing." Pyotr closed his eyes. The attack came at dawn, not guard. Not Astartes. Chaos. Cultists surged from lower tunnel networks, their bodies twisted, their eyes burning with borrowed hunger. Warp smoke coiled around them like a living thing. Pyotr felt it instantly. The warp pushed at him, harder than before. Not fear, temptation. "See how they come for your people. Let me help you end them." Pyotr forced his osmium form, grounding himself. "No," he growled. "The cultists attacked civilians first. That decided everything." Pyotr charged. He moved like a falling building, smashing bodies aside, tearing weapons from hands, slamming cultists into walls hard enough to knock them unconscious, or worse. Bolters had tried to kill him. Warp blades were different. One pierced deep, black ichor sizzling against his osmium skin. He roared, not in rage but pain, and wrenched the blade free. The cultist screamed something about gods. Pyotr broke his jaw with one precise strike. The whisper returned, stronger. "Kill them." They chose this. Pyotr seized the cult leader, a warp-swollen thing barely human, and held him aloft. He could feel corruption pouring off him like heat. This one would never repent. Pyotr's hands shook. This was the line. He looked back. Civilians cowered behind him. Children screamed. He made his choice. Piotr tightened his grip. Just once. The cult leader's body went limp. Silence fell. The warp recoiled violently, howling in frustrated fury. Piotr dropped the corpse, staring at his hands. He had killed. He sank to one knee, heart pounding, not in triumph but grief. The civilians did not cheer. They watched him with wide, horrified eyes. Then one child stepped forward and hugged his metal arm. "Thank you, big brother." Piotr bowed his head. He hated that it had been necessary. The cultists fled, broken, terrified. The warp's presence faded, but not entirely. Piotr rose slowly. "I will not do that again," he said aloud, more vow than promise. The old man nodded solemnly. "You did what you had to." Piotr did not feel absolved. Far above the hive, sensors pinged strangely. Warp fluctuation neutralized. Civilian survival spike. Unauthorized transhuman activity confirmed. A new notation was added to Imperial records. Subject, Colossus anomaly persists. Acts as civilian shield. Potential anti-chaos asset. Risk of martyrdom escalation high. Multiple eyes turned toward the hive. Some in curiosity, others in hunger. Colossus has crossed a line once and knows exactly what it cost him. The galaxy has noticed. And it is coming to see whether the man of steel can endure the weight of being needed. The Imperium sent something new. Not to destroy Colossus, not yet, to understand him. Piotr felt the tremor of armored footsteps long before the warrior emerged. The same space marine he had fought on the surface descended into the underhive, alone, a crimson giant whose presence made civilians scatter like leaves before a storm. This time, Piotr did not hide. He stepped into the open. The marine stopped 10 meters away. Neither raised a weapon. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. "You survived," the marine said finally. Piotr nodded. "You did not kill me." The marine's helm tilted. "You were not the priority." Piotr almost smiled. Almost. "My orders," the marine continued, "are to observe." "Observe what?" "Whether you are a threat." Piotr gestured to the civilians repairing a cracked water line nearby. "I am helping." "That is the problem." The marine's voice was not mocking, not angry, just stating fact. The Imperium does not tolerate unsanctioned symbols of hope. Hope breeds expectation. Expectation breeds unrest. Piotr frowned. "But they are only surviving." "Survival," the marine replied, "is not the same as obedience." Piotr stepped closer. "Not aggressively, just bravely. You kill to keep order. I protect to keep life. Are we enemies?" The marine considered this far longer than Piotr expected. Finally he answered, "I do not know." Those 4 words carried more honesty than anything Piotr had heard since arriving in this universe. The marine pointed to a collapsed corridor. "Your strength is notable. Show me how you use it." Piotr blinked. "You want me to? Lift rocks?" "Yes." Piotr sighed softly, but approached the ruins. A dozen people had been trapped beneath the collapse. Piotr dug in with careful hands, lifting beams and shattered ferrocrete as if they weighed nothing. He grunted from pain, his healing wounds strained, but kept working. Civilians pulled survivors free. The marine watched every motion, not the strength, the restraint. When the last survivor was freed, the marine spoke again. "Why protect them?" Piotr paused. He could have said many things. Philosophy, morality, duty. He chose truth. "Because I can." The marine did not respond immediately. His next words were recorded automatically by his helm. Subject Colossus exhibits no malice, no ambition, no desire for power, only protection instinct. Behavior aligns with pre-heresy Terran myth patterns, a guardian. Piotr didn't understand the significance, but the marine did. Guardians were dangerous because people followed them. The marine lowered his bolter. "Not out of peace, out of uncertainty." "If you wish to rebel," the marine said, "you could have already crushed this district." Piotr shook his head. "I do not rebel. I do not rule. I only stand between danger and the helpless." "That makes you unpredictable." Piotr's expression hardened. Then you must decide, he said quietly. Am I your enemy? He took one step closer. Or a man trying to do good in a cruel world? The Marine's helm retracted, revealing a scarred, battle-worn face, older than Piotr could comprehend. This was not an executioner now. This was a warrior wrestling with something he rarely encountered, a man who refused to hate him. After a long silence, the Marine spoke 4 words, I will continue observing. And he turned to leave. Not as a conqueror, not as a friend, but as someone who had seen a man where he expected a monster. A Space Marine has recognized Colossus as something other than an enemy, not an ally, not yet, but not a creature to be purged. And that uncertainty will shake the Imperium far more than any act of rebellion. Hope spreads faster when someone tall enough stands where everyone can see him. And Pyotr Rasputin was impossible to miss. The people of the Underhive stopped whispering his name. They started speaking it aloud. Colossus saved my children. Colossus lifted the collapsed Hab by himself. Colossus scares off the gangs. Colossus talks to us like we matter. The stories traveled upward. From sump scrapers to manufacturing workers to off-duty guardsmen. No embellishment needed. A giant of living steel walked the hive, kept civilians alive, and didn't kill Imperials even when they tried to kill him. A miracle, a heresy, sometimes both at once. They came in small groups at first. A wounded guardsman missing an arm, a widowed mother carrying her last ration chit, an old sump diver who just wanted someone to help bury her son, terrified children who had no one else who would defend them. They sought him out, not because he asked, not because he demanded loyalty, because he listened, because he didn't treat them like assets, liabilities, or sinners. The old man, Powder's earliest supporter, smiled as he watched the growing gatherings. You've become a symbol, Steel Brother. Powder frowned. I don't want to be. That is why they trust you. One morning, a Vox message crackled through the hive. Unauthorized gatherings detected. Disperse immediately. Obedience is mandatory. People hesitated. A new emotion flickered in their eyes. Not defiance, but something more dangerous. They looked at Pyotr first, as if he could decide whether they ran or stayed. Pyotr felt his heart sink. This was what he feared. He stepped forward, raising his voice. Go home, please. Do not gather here because of me. But instead of dispersing, more people arrived. Tired workers, bruised young men, children holding scraps of metal they insisted were good luck charms. They formed a ring around him, not to protect him, to protect each other. Pyotr whispered, This is not what I wanted. The old man touched his arm again. It is not about what you want. It is about what we need. A mother approached with shaking hands. Her young son, half-starved, hid behind her leg. Steel Brother, she said, voice trembling, we don't want rebellion. We don't want trouble. We just want someone who sees us. Pyotr knelt to meet her eyes. I see you, he said softly. The words broke her. She began to sob, clinging to his metal hand. A hush fell over the crowd. Pyotr looked up at the circle of frightened, hopeful faces. And in that moment, they were no longer hiding underground. They were standing with a guardian. Pyotr rose, slowly. Every eye lifted with him. His voice carried across the ruined plaza. I am not your leader. I am not your hero. I am only a man trying to help, he paused. But I will not run. If danger comes, I will stand here. If you need me, I will protect you. Not because I am strong, but because it is right. Silence. Then the old man murmured, Hope. The crowd repeated it like a prayer. Pyotr lowered his head. He felt ashamed, unworthy, but he would not dishonor their trust. One of the children stepped forward, the same girl who had first hugged his arm weeks ago. She pointed at his massive chest and said, You're not just Colossus. She touched her own chest. You're Brother Steel. The name rippled through the crowd. Brother Steel, Brother Steel, Brother Steel. Pyotr felt tears press behind his eyes. Not sadness, not joy, responsibility. He bowed his head. If that is how you see me, then I will do my best to deserve it. The Inquisitor received the report minutes later. Unauthorized gatherings, a named symbol, growing civilian cohesion, reduced violence in multiple sectors, increased reports of Brother Steel interventions. Morin read in silence. Then he whispered the one thing the Imperium feared most. He's becoming loved. He closed the data slate slowly. Love in this galaxy was dangerous. Love could ignite rebellion. Love could damn worlds. But sometimes, love could save them. Colossus has become more than a protector. He has become a symbol, and symbols draw the eyes of gods and the wrath of empires. The Imperium does not ignore symbols. It erases them. The order did not come from the commissariat. It did not come from the guard. It did not even come from the Ordo Hereticus. It came from higher, cold, administrative, unemotional. Subject, brother status, uncontrolled morale catalyst. Risk classification, creeping uprising vector resolution options. Capture, preferred. Neutralization, authorized. Never heard the order. He felt it. Drop pods screamed through the hive's upper atmosphere like falling meteors. This time, it wasn't one of Astartes. It was a full squad. They landed with violence meant to shatter resolve. Craters forming beneath ceramite boots, shockwaves knocking civilians off their feet. Piotr stepped forward immediately. "Get back," he told the people calmly. "Hide, please." No one ran. That terrified him. The space marine who had observed Piotr before stepped out of the formation. His voice was amplified now, formal, ritualistic. "Brother Steele," he said, "you are ordered to submit to Imperial authority." Piotr nodded slowly. "If I go," he asked, "will you leave them alone?" The marine hesitated. His pause was answer enough. Piotr's jaw tightened. "Then I cannot go." Bolters locked. Piotr did not charge. He became terrain. He braced himself between the squad and the civilians, metal feet anchoring into ferrocrete. Bolter fire hammered into him instantly, round after round detonating against his body in explosive fury. He felt ribs crack beneath the osmium. Blood ran down his side. He did not fall. Heavy bolters opened up. This hurt. This really hurt. Chunks of metal tore from him, scattering into sparks and slag. Still, he stood. The Marine commanders exchanged brief vox bursts. He's not advancing. He's not retreating. He's absorbing. They realized too late what that meant. A tech Marine stepped forward, servo arms unfolding. Melta cannon. Piotr recognized the weapon instantly. Extreme heat, armor killer. He took one step forward, not to attack, but to draw the shot. "Please," he said quietly, "don't do this here." The Melta fired. White sunfire swallowed Piotr's chest. The heat was beyond anything he had felt. His osmium skin glowed incandescent. He screamed, not from fear, from pain. Smoke cleared. Colossus still stood, barely. His chest was cratered, molten metal dripping, internal structure exposed. His legs trembled violently. The civilians stared in horror. Piotr raised one shaking arm. "Run," he croaked. "Now!" They finally listened. Piotr took one final step forward. His knee buckled. He crashed to the ground like a falling tower, the street shattering beneath him. The Astartes aimed again, and then a vox interrupt cut across all channels. "Hold fire!" Inquisitor Morin stepped from the shadows. His voice was controlled, but strained. "He is not dying," Morin said. "He is breaking." The observing Marine stared at Piotr's ruined form. He never fought back. Morin looked down at the giant shielding scorched civilians even as consciousness faded. "No," the Inquisitor said quietly. "He never did." Morin raised his rosette. "By inquisitorial authority," he said, "Brother Steele is declared a protected anomaly under observation and containment." Several Marines stiffened. Piotr's eyes fluttered. "Don't hurt them," he whispered. Morin met his gaze. "I won't," he said. "And that is why you terrify us." Piotr lost consciousness. Colossus has paid the price for being a wall. He did not win. He was not victorious. He was necessary. Colossus awoke to silence. Real silence. No gunfire. No screaming. No warp whispers pressing at the edges of his thoughts, just the steady hum of containment fields and the faint echo of machinery far above him. He lay within an immense adamantine chamber, walls lined with layered suppression glyphs and reinforced lattice fields. They weren't screaming with power. They were cautious, respectful. Restraint circled his arms and legs, not crushing, not cruel, anchored deep into the chamber floor. His osmium form remained active, though weakened, damaged metal slowly cooling and reknitting where it could. He tested the chains. They held, but only because he allowed them to. Footsteps approached. Inquisitor Kale Morin entered alone, coat untouched by battle, eyes tired. "You could break free," Morin said evenly, "but you haven't." Piotr turned his head slowly. "If I did," Piotr replied softly, "you would hurt them." Morin nodded once. "Correct." They regarded one another in silence for several seconds. Then Morin spoke the truth most feared by the Imperium. "You've changed this hive." Piotr swallowed. "I didn't want to." "That," Morin said, "is why we couldn't kill you." Tech adepts observed from behind armored glass, murmuring Ben Herrick notations. Not Psyker, not Xenos, not Heretech, warp-resistant in transformed state. Moral resistance anomalously high. "He defies categorization," one whispered. Morin ignored them. "You do understand," Morin said to Piotr, "that if released openly, you will eventually be worshipped." Piotr's eyes widened. "I don't want that." "Intent is irrelevant," Morin replied. "Symbolism does not ask permission." Morin stepped closer. "We cannot let you remain visible," he said, "but we cannot destroy you without provoking unrest that will take decades to suppress." He paused. "So we will relocate you." Piotr frowned. "Imprison me?" "No," Morin said. "Assign you." Piotr felt a chill despite the warmth of his metal skin. "There are worlds," Morin continued, "where the Imperium has lost control completely. Civilian death rates exceed strategic value. Reinforcement is inefficient." He met Piotr's gaze. "But you can go where armies fail." Piotr understood immediately. "You want me to be your shield." "Wherever you stand," Morin said, "civilian survival spikes. Warp influence diminishes. Violence stalls." He exhaled. "You are a walking containment event." Piotr's voice was quiet. "If I refuse?" Morin did not hesitate. "Then someone else like me will come," he said. "They will not be kind." Piotr closed his eyes. He saw the children, the mother, the broken hive beginning, just barely, to live again. "If I agree," Piotr asked, "you do not use me to hurt innocents?" Morin raised two fingers. Inquisitorial oath. Piotr believed him. That was the most dangerous thing of all. "One thing," Piotr said quietly. "What will the people think?" Morin looked away. "They will think Brother Steele died holding a line no one else could." Piotr's chest tightened. "Then let them believe that," he said, "if it keeps them safe." The chains released with a heavy clang. Piotr rose slowly to his full height. Pain still lingered. Scars remained. But his resolve was unbroken. Morin stepped back, offering neither salute nor reverence. "You are not free," the Inquisitor said, "but you are necessary." Piotr looked down at his hands, scarred, powerful, gentle. "I will protect people," he said, "wherever you send me." Morin nodded grimly. "And the Imperium," he murmured, "will never understand what it owes you." Colossus has not been broken. He has not been silenced. He has been buried inside the Imperium itself, used as a shield where no shield should exist. The Imperium learned to lie gently, and it told that lie everywhere Colossus went. Brother Steele had died. That was the story, slain during a containment breach, honored in sealed administratum records, mourned quietly by those who had known him, never loudly enough to invite investigation. The Underhive believed it. They had no reason not to. But on worlds, the Imperium did not care to name publicly. A different truth walked out of black ships and into fire. A giant of steel, unmarked, unannounced, uncelebrated. Calax 9 was a dead world that hadn't realized it yet. Civil war had hollowed it out. Chaos cult activity burned beneath every major city. Imperial Guard casualties exceeded replacement projections by a factor too embarrassing to report. So the Imperium sent no regiments. They sent Piotr. He landed alone. No banners, no blessing rites, no Vox announcement. Just the sound of metal feet touching ash. Civilians saw him first. They always did. Gunfire erupted within minutes. Autoguns, stubbers, improvised weapons. Piotr stepped between fire and flesh exactly as he always had. Bullets sparked harmlessly off osmium skin. People screamed, then stopped screaming, because the steel giant did not strike back. He held. He disarmed. He blocked corridors. He lifted overturned transports and used them as shields rather than weapons. The warp pressed at him, harder than before. A whole world's despair rolled against his mind like a tide. Potter stayed in metal, grounded, focused. A chaos enforcer, bloated with warp blessings, charged him, screaming obscenities to uncaring gods. Piotr caught the creature's fist. Its bones shattered. The warp whispered, "Ended." Piotr shook his head. No. He wrapped the creature in broken ferrosteel and crushed it, not killing it, but rendering it helpless. The enforcer wept in confusion. Chaos hated that. By the end of the first night, entire hab blocks had emptied behind him. People moved in his wake, not because he ordered them to, because standing near him felt safer. Piotr tried to discourage it. "Go where there is shelter," he told them gently. "This is shelter," they replied. The pattern repeated, every time. Inquisitor Morin observed from orbit. Reports scrolled continuously. Civilian casualty rate, collapsing. Chaos influence, suppressed, not eradicated. Enemy units avoiding proximity to subject. Imperial morale, anomalously improving. A junior adept whispered, "He's winning without killing." Morin closed his eyes. "That," he said, "is what terrifies them." Weeks passed. Piotr did not rest. He could not remain in human form safely. Warp pressure spiked immediately when he did. His osmium skin became his refuge. But even steel wears down. Cracks form more easily now. Healing slowed. Pain lingered longer. He trained when he could, lifting collapsed structures, testing his limits carefully. He grew stronger, not explosively, gradually, earned. The Imperium never called him Colossus again, never Brother Steel. On classified slates, he became Asset, Bulwark Prime Deployment Type Civilian, Interposition Operational Rule, Subject Morale is Strategic Variable. Piotr would have hated that name. It stripped away the man, but the people he protected, they used another. They whispered it in prayers and tears. The Big Brother, Kallax 9, did not fall. It did not truly recover either. But when Imperial forces finally arrived, months later, they found something unexpected. Barricades manned by civilians, children alive, warp corruption thinned. A captain asked nervously, "What stopped the collapse?" No one answered him. They only pointed to the streets reinforced with bent steel and lifted debris, shaped by hands that never crushed anyone beneath them. As he stood alone at the edge of a ruined city, watching evacuation ships lift survivors away, Piotr felt something settle in his heart. This was his role. Not freedom, not victory. Endless interventions in places the Imperium did not care to save. He accepted it. If this galaxy had no mercy, then he would be its remainder. Colossus has become the Imperium's last resort and humanity's first line of hope. The Imperium never recorded his victories. That was deliberate. World after world followed the same trajectory. Not salvation, not triumph, stabilization. Colossus arrived alone. Violence been around him. Chaos recoiled, frustrated. Civilians survived in numbers that defied projections. Administratum scribes flagged the anomaly again and again, then stopped flagging it because the results were consistent, and consistency was dangerous to question. On Foros Reach, he held a cathedral upright for 3 days while civilians escaped beneath it. On Virel Dank, he waded through promethium fires to clear evacuation corridors, skin glowing red hot, metal cracking but unbroken. On Halbrecht's Fall, He stood against a renegade knight's advance long enough for an entire city quarter to be extracted. Each time, he bled, he broke, he healed, he held, and every time he tried to vanish afterward, it never worked. Daemons circled him like sharks. They could not tempt him easily. They could not possess him while he remained still. They tried something else, whispers of exhaustion, dreams of failure when he dared sleep in human form, visions of children he could not save. You cannot protect them all, they murmured. Pyotr did not argue. I know, he whispered back, and still he stood. That was what chaos could not bear. Inquisitor Morin reviewed years of data alone, survival graphs, warp suppression curves, psychological resilience reports, all pointed to one conclusion. Pyotr Rasputin was not a weapon. He was a buffer, a delay, a man forcing the galaxy to slow down just long enough for people to live another day. Morin stared at a single still image, Colossus kneeling to lift a frightened child onto a medship. You should never have been ours, Morin murmured. It almost happened on Carthage Prime. An evacuation ship exploded in low orbit, thousands dead. Pyotr stood beneath the falling debris, fists buried in the ground, metal trembling. He had been there. He had stood 10 meters too far away. The warp seized the opening. Your strength is wasted, it hissed. If you would just let go. Pyotr dropped to one knee. For a second, just a second, he considered what it would feel like to stop caring, to stop holding back, to become what the galaxy demanded. A hand touched his arm, a child, burned, shaking, alive. You tried, she said. Pyotr closed his eyes. The whisper shattered. Something impossible began to happen. Entire populations started preparing before violence peaked. Barricades were built with evacuation in mind. Supply caches appeared without orders. Children were hidden early. They had learned, not tactics, trust. Even when Colossus wasn't there yet, they believed he would come. Pyotr saw the danger immediately. Faith turned him into a myth. A myth invited worship, and worship was death. Pyotr confronted Morin at last. You must stop sending me, he said quietly. They're starting to believe I'm something else. Morin did not deny it. You give people time, he replied. Time to act like humans again. Pyotr's voice cracked. I am not a god. I know, Morin said, and that's the problem. They stood in silence. I will not let them worship me, Pyotr said firmly. Morin bowed his head. I will do what I can. They both knew it wouldn't be enough. Somewhere chaos plots deeper. Somewhere the ecclesiarchy watches closely. Somewhere a cardinal writes a sermon he hasn't dared preach yet. And a giant of steel walks from fire to fire, not fixing the galaxy, but teaching it something radical and heretical, that even here someone will stand with you. Colossus is no longer just a protector of people. He is changing how they endure. And that may be the most dangerous thing of all. It began with a sermon that was never meant to leave its cathedral. A low-ranking cardinal on Virel line, desperate, half-mad, surrounded by survivors who refused to break, tried to explain what they had seen. He did not name Colossus. He dared not. Instead, he spoke of the Emperor's mercy made manifest through steel. That was enough. The sermon spread, slowly, carefully edited, stripped of specificity. Not a man, not a protector, a lesson. Sometimes the Emperor does not arrive as fire or judgment, but as endurance. The ecclesiarchy did not endorse Colossus, but it did not condemn the idea either. And that silence mattered. Behind closed doors, high lords debated. Colossus destabilized doctrine, but eliminating him destabilized outcomes. Civilian survival rates were measurably higher where he intervened. Warp events stalled. Rebellions softened into evacuations instead of uprisings. And so the Imperium chose its favorite solution, plausible distance. They would not announce him. They would not name him. They would not deny him. They would simply stop looking too closely. Official records replaced Bulwark Prime with anomalous defensive event, self-resolving one. If the Imperium could not control him, It would pretend he wasn't a person at all. For Pyotr Rasputin, that decision carried weight. Less scrutiny meant fewer chains. It also meant less protection. He was sent farther now, to worse places, to wars already lost. He was no longer escorted. He was released, dropped at the edge of disaster zones, and left to decide where the line must be drawn. Pyotr did not complain. He only asked one thing of Morin: let them live. Morin never promised more than that. On Gathalum Secundus, Pyotr arrived too late. The city had already fallen to a daemon incursion. Civilians were trapped between daemons and imperial bombardment authorization. Pyotr stood in the middle of the ruins, Vox channels screaming overhead. Orbital fire was minutes away. There was only one way to save them. He would have to hold the breach alone. Against the warp, against heat that could melt his skin, against a force that would not stop. Morin's voice came through, tight. If you stay, you will not survive. Pyotr's reply was calm. I know. He turned off external comms and stepped forward. The daemons came in waves. Warp blades screamed against osmium. Reality warped around him. His body cracked, reformed, cracked again. He did not strike to dominate. He shoved, blocked, held doorways with his own body. His mind burned. The warp clawed at memories. Ileana, his family, the children who trusted him. Give in. He did not. He stayed still. When orbital fire finally came, it came after the evacuation was complete. The city was erased. Pyotr was found at ground zero, burned, cracked, still standing. No commendations were given. No records updated. No sermons preached. The High Lords issued a single private directive. If the anomaly continues to function, do not interfere. The Custodes did not object. The Inquisition did not contest it. Sometimes the Imperium chose to survive by not touching what worked. As med servitors worked silently to stabilize his shattered form, Pyotr stared at the ash-filled sky. He had saved them, again. But he could feel how close he was to failing, how much steel it took to remain gentle. He whispered, not to gods, not to the Imperium, I will hold as long as I can. The galaxy did not answer, it never did. But it gave him one thing: time. Colossus has become the Imperium's unspoken safeguard. Not worshipped, not commanded, not denied, simply allowed. The Imperium writes no legends of mercy. But sometimes mercy becomes legend anyway. It happened on Marrow-Deep, a mining world, unimportant, expendable, forgotten. Chaos cults erupted in the lower pits. Seismic instability followed. The Administratum prepared to classify the world as a loss. But then survivors whispered a phrase on open Vox channels: Brother, steel is here. The words spread like wildfire. Across hab blocks, across mines, across battered worker crews clutching rusted tools like talismans. And something miraculous occurred. Entire work crews evacuated before the catastrophic collapses began. People coordinated without orders. Children were moved to the surface hours ahead of schedule. They believed he would come, and so they acted as if hope mattered. Pyotr arrived late. The air was thick with red dust. The ground shook with every tremor. He stood on the edge of a collapsing crater and saw thousands of miners flooding upward, screaming, injured, desperate, yet alive. And then he saw why. They had built escape paths wide enough for him, ramps reinforced with steel beams, bridges strengthened so his weight wouldn't collapse them, markers burned into the rock, Brother Steel route. They had prepared for him because they believed he would come. Pyotr's throat tightened. He descended into the chaos. A seismic rupture tore through the mine's core, opening a chasm kilometers deep. A section of supports began to fail, threatening to take an entire settlement with it. Pyotr stepped beneath the arch, set his feet, and lifted. The weight was unfathomable. Entire strata layers groaned. Reinforced beams cracked. Dust rained in choking torrents. His osmium skin split under the strain, bright fractures glowing with internal heat. Pain engulfed him. He held anyway. People streamed past him, fleeing up the route they had prepared. Children clung to his legs before being carried away by frantic parents. Pyotr's vision blurred from effort. This was Titan-level strength and beyond. But the stakes were simple. If he let go, thousands died. He refused. A child tripped near the chasm's edge. Pyotr couldn't move. He couldn't shift even an inch. The warp roared in triumph. Choose. Save the structure or save the child. Pyotr whispered, both. He extended one hand, fingers trembling, tendons screaming, and caught the child by the back of her coat. He held the entire mind with one arm and saved her with the other. The image burned itself into the minds of everyone who saw it. A myth, a miracle, a man. Hours later, when the last evacuation ship rose into orbit, Pyotr collapsed in the crater, body broken and half molten. Morin's voice reached him through static. You did it, the Inquisitor said softly. Pyotr's reply was a rasp. No, we did. He meant the people, their preparation, their courage, their refusal to give up. For the first time, Pyotr realized something profound. He was not just a protector. He had become a teacher. He taught people how to survive, how to brace, how to work together, how to believe, not in him, but in themselves. That was the real miracle. A sealed inquisitorial report crystallized the truth. Subject, Brother Steele. Impact assessment. Civilians respond to his presence with increased coordination. Chaos incursions weaken in proximity. Morale improves without mandated propaganda. Violence decreases without executions. Conclusion: his existence stabilizes humanity more effectively than fear. Directive: do not interfere, do not expose, do not destroy. A victory without celebration, a solution without recognition, a hope prayer. Years passed. Pyotr walked more worlds. He saved more people. He buried more dead. He bled more than any hero of ancient Terra ever had. But he remained gentle. He remained steel. He remained Pyotr. People still whispered Brother Steele, but more and more often he heard something else. The Big Brother. Not a god, not a myth. Just a man who stood between nightmares and the defenseless. A sibling, a guardian, a promise. One quiet night, Pyotr stood alone on a repaired city wall, watching the stars flicker. A child approached, one of the many he'd helped save. She tugged his finger. Brother Steele, are you ever going to stop? Pyotr knelt, the joints in his metal legs groaning. No, he said softly, not as long as someone needs me. She hugged him. Then we're not afraid. Pyotr closed his eyes. That was enough. It always would be. History will not remember him. That was never in the Imperium's plans. And Pyotr Rasputin never asked for it. There is no statue in his image. No basilica carved with his likeness. No hymn written in his name. In the endless shelves of the Administratum, his actions are scattered, misfiled, mislabeled, buried beneath dull phrases and meaningless numbers. Anomalous defensive event civilian loss reduction, unexplained chaos, infiltration, abruptly stalled. No name, no face, only outcomes. That is how the Imperium survives. But truth does not live in libraries. It lives in memory. On 100 forgotten worlds, mothers tell their children a quiet story before sleep, of a giant who stood between them and fire. Miners touch bent support beams before descending into shafts, believing the steel remembers his hands. Old soldiers wake from nightmares, convinced they heard heavy footsteps nearby, just in time. No one teaches these stories. They survive because they are needed. Pyotr still walks, older now. Not in years, but in weight. His osmium skin carries scars he never fully heals. His human form is thinner, tired more quickly, careful when he allows it to return. He trains when he can, lifts when it matters, holds when nothing else will. He does not seek battle, but battle always finds him. And every time it does, people live longer than they were meant to. Inquisitor Kale Morin files one final private note before reassignment. We tried fear. We tried obedience. We tried annihilation. He chose endurance. I do not believe the Imperium deserves him. But humanity does. The file is sealed, restricted, never referenced again. The 41st millennium does not become kinder War does not cease. Chaos does not weaken. The Imperium does not repent. But somewhere on a world marked for death, a city lasts one more day. A child survives one more night. A family escapes one more time. Because steel stood where fear expected nothing. Pyotr Rasputin never becomes a god, never becomes a saint, never becomes a legend the Imperium can control. He becomes something much rarer, a reminder that even here, in the cruelest galaxy imaginable, someone will stand with you. And sometimes, that is enough. In a galaxy where mercy is a weakness, there lived a man who refused to harden his heart, not because he was unbreakable, but because he knew what breaking would cost. Colossus did not win wars. He did not topple empires. He did not rewrite destiny. He did something far more dangerous. He saved people. And in doing so, he taught a merciless universe that hope does not require permission. It only requires someone willing to stand. So if one day, in the darkest place you can imagine, you hear the echo of heavy footsteps, slow, steady, unyielding, do not be afraid. It is not a monster. It is Brother Steel. And he will not let the darkness take you today.